Hi, it's Laura at Reading 18 Tarot and Books. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. This is another video in the Top Tarot Trumps tag started by Masha of Musings by Masha. And this time I will be sharing some favorite Hermit cards. I've made a playlist focused on this tag, so if you haven't seen my earlier ones and would like to, I have organized them all in order in one place for viewing ease. I have 6 Hermit cards to show you. And they're really all over the place in terms of why I like them and what I like about them. The Hermit is a card that I would say that I draw relatively often. It is a card that I tend to like in decks, but it's also not one that I have really strong preferences about what it looks like. Like, there's a lot of different kinds of Hermits that appeal to me, as you'll see in my selections, and I will timestamp below in a general sort of way as I've been doing. So, Hermits that I have chosen as favorites. Going relatively non-traditional in a lot of these, to no one's surprise, on my channel. In no particular order, I have the Hermit from Into the Void, Black Cat Tarot. How could this not be a favorite? Look at it. It is so sweet. I have 2 cats, and they both love being in a box. So this is just an image that brings me joy. And, you know, this is hermit in the sense of like wanting to hermit as a verb, I think. Wanting to, you know, have some time to oneself. And so, you know, has to be a favorite. Into the Void, Black Cat Tarot. I also chose the Hermit from a deck that I'm working with right now on my reading table, and that is the Tarot Sirène. And this Hermit is from a Marseille deck, Hermit. And I just really like the incorporation of this kind of crab imagery to the Hermit for a mermaid themed deck. I think this idea of the Hermit as the one who carries their home with them, you know, until they outgrow it and they need to be in something else. I think that is really great. You know, and the idea that the Hermit can recede into his home at any time, I also think is a good Hermit symbolism. And I just really like this image, and I really like this deck a lot. So that's a favorite Hermit. I also chose the Hermit from Afro Tarot 2. And this one, I just really like the composition of this card. If I can focus. There we go. I really like that this Hermit is looking out at the world. I really like the way that this Hermit is lit. Like the shadows and the illumination of the world just coming into the edge of this cave. I like the kind of lushness in the background. I like the way that the Hermit figure is there. You know, this feels like a liminal Hermit between maybe seclusion and worldliness. And I just think aesthetically it's very beautiful. It's Afro Tarot 2. The next few Hermits are nature-based decks, which everyone knows that I love, or landscape-based, we could say. And the next one I chose is the Hermit from the Tarot for the Great Outdoors. And this is a deck that is featuring more in my top tarot trumps than I thought it would. It's relatively new to my collection. It hasn't been out that long, or in print that long. But the colors are just so beautiful in this deck. And I feel like the imagery is really well chosen. And this is just magical to me. And when I want to get away from things for a while, step away from the kind of mundane routine of everyday life and work and all of these things, and I want to, have a little getaway, this is often, what I would want. And I live not far from Algonquin Park and other large provincial parks, Kawartha Highlands Provincial Park in Ontario, where I live. And so this is very familiar kind of scenery to me with the lake there. I'm not far enough north to see the northern lights, but I could drive to be close enough to see them if I wanted to do that. I can't say that I want to encounter moose. Moose are scary, actually. If you've never seen a moose in person, they're huge. So I would be happy to have the moose on the other side of the water from where I was. Though moose, can and do swim, and like being on islands, actually, because it's safer for them. So that's an interesting aspect, thinking about the moose there. But this cabin just feels so inviting to me. And that's, this is a kind of hermit energy of, where I would go to maybe work on something. Some kind of, druidry related work or something like that in a hermit mode. So I really like that one. Similarly, I do have things that I love in a hermit card. Similarly, I chose the Hermit from the Tarot of Architectural Objects. This is by Tina of Queen of Wands, who also created the Naturescapes Tarot, which I love, and the Page of Cats Tarot as well. And this Hermit is, again, a cabin in the forest. And this feels to me like the dwelling place of a hermit. And this, again, looks like terrain that is very familiar to me. I'm not sure where this photo was taken. These are stock photos, so some of them Tina knows where they're taken, and there's a little white book that you can download that details the photographer's information and sometimes the city or country or area that the photo was taken. I don't remember off the top of my head if this is one that is known or not, but this is another one that just feels like a place that one would hermit. So I really like that one. And the last hermit that I chose is one that I particularly love because of my experience in drawing the card at a particular time. So mostly I've been talking about these top tarot trumps in terms of kind of the aesthetic of the cards, or how I feel the card's artist has made particular kinds of symbolic and representational choices that work in terms of speaking to how I think of the card and things like this. This one is really about how this particular hermit has shown up for me. And that is the Hermit from the Hoodoo Tarot by Tiana Lee McQuillar. And this hermit depicts Dr. Grant. And this is a fantastic deck. I got this deck, not because, but like in part because I would say that Kim from Abundant Life Tarot was doing a deck study with this deck. And so this deck had been on my radar as one that I thought was beautiful, but Kim doing that really prompted me to get this deck, and I'm really glad that I did. It's really beautiful. But I'll just read to you a bit of the book here, which is quite substantial, and I'm into it when the book is full of bibliography, right? So Dr. Grant, just this is just snippets. I'm not going to read the whole thing. So Tiana Lee McQuillar explains that Dr. Grant was a Protestant conjure doctor from New Orleans. Unfortunately, the details of his life are unknown. By the time Zora Neale Hurston interviewed Dr. Grant and others in the 30s, many conjure doctors were using herbs and other supplies from catalogs. Dr. Grant, however, was a proud swamper who preferred to do things the old-fashioned way by gathering what he needed in the wild. And it goes on to talk about Dr. Grant being, in very high demand for his skills. And for a meaning of the card, the meaning of the card includes: when Dr. Grant appears in a reading, it may indicate the necessity for some alone time to recharge. Specifically, it may recommend solitude in nature to reflect and listen. This is more important now than ever, as we are constantly accessible to others via technology. And it goes on further down to read, this card is not about just sitting in the park for a few minutes looking at pretty trees, flowers, or a squirrel before you get back online. No, it's about considering the essence of that tree, those flowers, and the squirrel, and how you're connected to them. It's about perceiving the interrelationships of all things to the other and the extraction of power from fundamental reality. And this says, this card may also indicate that you're seeking knowledge and you're ready to take things to the next level. It's time to seek guidance from a worthy teacher. And it goes on, if you receive Dr. Grant in a reading, consider the following. And all of the majors have this, and it's kind of bullet points, and some of them are questions to ask yourself and ideas, things like that. And this Hermit, Dr. Grant, as being about time in nature and time about relationships to nature, is not necessarily a representation of the hermit or an aspect of the hermit that I see represented as explicitly as this very often. But at the time that I was working with this deck in the deck study, and I read the guidebook in full, and I have a little dedicated notebook for this deck. I was really I really enjoyed that deck study a lot. At the time that I was participating in this, I was also exploring Druidry and whether Druidry might be a path that I would like to step onto in a kind of dedicated way. And Druidry also is a very nature-based practice that focuses very much on kind of interrelationships with nature, and that invites connection with nature and so on. And Dr. Grant just would not leave me alone when I was thinking about this, and kept coming up in readings repeatedly. And it's like, okay, there's something here. And so I was exploring with Dr. Grant, I think, as a prompt in a lot of ways to think about my path, my trajectory in particular kinds of ways. And I read some of Zora Neale Hurston's writings about Dr. Grant, and went to look for some secondary sources, and also thinking a lot about the Hermit card at that time in different ways than I usually would, I think, because the Hermit is so much of a solitary figure a lot of the time, and yet I was in this place of exploring possibilities of potentially joining a group, like a Druid order. And so this was a kind of really interesting time for me to explore the Hermit, and it was this specific Hermit card that brought me there. So I'm very appreciative of this card and appreciative of this deck for that. And yeah, I just think that this is a really wonderful Hermit depiction of a figure gathering herbs in a mindful and knowledgeable and deliberate way that he will use in his workings. So that's my last Hermit card. My Hermits that I've chosen: the Into the Void Black Cat Tarot, the Tarot de Marseille Tarot Sirène, the Afro Tarot 2, the Tarot for the Great Outdoors, the Tarot of Architectural Objects, and the Hoodoo Tarot. Those are my favorite Hermits. If you want to tell me below what some of your favorite Hermit cards are, or if you work with any of these particular decks that I've shared, I would love to chat with you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.